Hi there, and thank you for tuning in. Here I have the wonderful Nikon D700, a camera where I have produced more than 10 videos about this one, and I have a playlist about it. And I strongly recommend that you watch those videos in case you want to learn how to, for instance, do bracketing or shoot in manual focus or whatever. But today I want to cover the basics of this camera, and maybe this is the sort of the reverse order of producing these videos. I should have started with this one. I want to show you all the buttons and dials on the outside of the camera and a little bit about the menu system, but mainly take you a tour around the camera, showing you all the buttons and dials. And in doing so, I hope to give you some comfort for, basically how to operate the camera. And I think that if you have been working with this camera for 2 weeks, a month or so, then I cannot, with this video, teach you anything. Then you may want to drop off here. But if you're new to this camera, let me start out with these that I'm showing you here. Because I once lost a camera in a saltwater accident, and that was because I was not wearing a camera strap. And maybe that's a little bit strange place to start, but if you're new to photography and you're new to the Nikon D700, this camera is a gem. You cannot buy it new anymore, and I'm sure its value will only increase over time. So you might as well do everything you can to take good care of your Nikon D700. And the best, or one of the very good ways to start that journey, is to buy a camera strap. I'm not sponsored by Peak Design. This is a Peak Design camera strap, but two things I really like about this strap. One thing is that you can, as you can see, you can take it off. And that means when you're home working with your camera, you don't need to have the straps sitting on the camera. And I really enjoy that. And you can quickly remount them. And the other thing is that this camera strap is very thick or wide. So you have, when you have a camera, this camera with, the Nikon 180mm lens and a battery grip mounted, if you have such one, that will weigh in the vicinity of 2.5 kilos. And if you put on a strap like I have here for my also a very good camera, the Fuji X-T20, but it has much thinner straps here. Still Peak Design. No, I'm still not sponsored by Peak Design. I bought all of these myself, but I would strongly recommend you get a strap. But if you put a thin strap like this one on a 2.5 kilo package, these straps will cut into your shoulders. So make sure you get a wide strap like this one. I'll put some affiliate links in the description below so you can see where you can get them on Amazon. With that out of the way, I want to start with some really, really basic stuff, and just to make absolutely sure that you don't think I'm covering advanced stuff today, I want to talk about the first thing you need to have on your camera, and that's power. And power you get from the battery, and the battery door sits here bottom right. And contrary to many other cameras, there's no button you need to push in order to release the battery. It just falls out halfway. It doesn't drop on the floor because there's a little bit resistance here, but it comes out halfway, so you can just, pull it out. You can see there are 3 contacts here. Those 3 contacts, when you charge it, you need to hit those 3 contacts up here. So what you do is you position the battery a little bit away from the contacts, and then you just push it like this, and it slides into place, and then loud click. When it's charging, it's flashing. When it's done charging, it's solid. That's the way it works. So that's number one, to get some power onto your camera. And once you have that, then at least that's a good starting point. Again, the 3 contacts, you can see the drawing here, shows you the 3 contacts need to be like this in order to hit the 3 contacts in the camera. As I said, there's no button you need to get past here in order to make it sit tightly. The way you make it sit tightly is simply to close the door. There's a little handle here that sort of flips the locking mechanism. So you need to push that one downwards, in this case here, in order to lock, to open it, and just push in order to lock it like that. If you are planning to mount a battery pack, then here's the rubber thing that you need to take off in order to get access to the contacts. You can place this one in the battery grip, and I have a separate video about the battery grip in case you want to look into that. Power on your camera, that's number one. Number two is to have some memory to store your pictures, and that happens, or is around here. It only has one memory slot, and some would say that's a big problem. And I guess if you're a professional, redundancy is always a good thing, but here there's only one card slot. It's a CF card. You can see here I have this one. It came with the camera that I bought used, so I have, I've never bought a CF card. It just came with the camera. You slide it in like this. It took me 2 weeks to learn that this little gray thing here is a button. If you push that one, maybe that's difficult to see. Let me turn the camera like this. When you push this one, you can see that it pushes out the CF card. Push this one and it comes out. So that's a number two, very, very basic. That's that you have a memory card in your camera. You close it by pushing it like that way. You open it pushing it this way, and then it's spring laden so that it jumps up, right? Not too complicated, but remember the little gray card, that's very useful. You can pull it out, but no need to do that when there is a little button to be operated. The third thing you need is a lens, and I will show you here today with a lens that has CPU contacts and autofocus. And I know I will get this question, so I might as well get it out of the way. This is the Tokina ATX Pro Macro 100 f2.8D, and this is a very, very good lens, especially taking the price point into consideration. I can highly recommend it, and I think I also have several videos on this lens. When you mount it, there is a button here on the left-hand side of your camera, front left. If you push that one down, it sort of releases, or potentially releases the lens. Then you need to turn it like this, and you can take off the lens. You will notice there's a little white dot here, and there is a marking here. In this case, on Nikon camera lenses, the dot here is white, but it typically sits at the beginning of the aperture scale here, and you can actually, in this case, you can mount this lens exactly upside down. So always remember that the aperture scale typically needs to point upwards. So align, in this case, the little green dot and the white dot, and then you turn, and you can hear it makes a little sound. When you mount a lens like this, make sure that the aperture is at the minimum aperture and that you have locked it. Let me just show you. If you can actually mount it with the aperture in, whatever position. And when you do that and mount it, you will see that there is an error message here, top right flashing FEE. You can also see it's flashing here in the LCD. And that's another thing to observe. All of the things you can see in the LCD here on the top, that's also what you can see here in the LCD on the rear, but there's more information in this one, obviously, because it's a bigger screen. But as long as you don't have the lens in the minimal aperture position, it will, give you a mistake or error message like this. So turn it to, you can see, turn it to, in this case, 32, and the problem is solved. So now we're good to go. So the way you switch on the camera is here on the front right of the camera. You have a little button here that you can switch sideways. You can actually turn it a little bit more than on, so to speak. There is a little lamp here, and you can see as soon as you push it in to that position, it's actually spring laden, so it jumps back to on. But what that does is it switches on the green LCD here. It's backlit, and it's turned on for some seconds. This is configurable via the menu system, and I have 3 videos, believe it or not, about the menu system. So look those up if you want to understand where it is you configure this. But you will find yourself doing this many times over the day when you're a Nikon shooter in order to be able to see what's in the LCD, especially if you're shooting in low light situations. So now you have a camera that switches on, it has a lens, it has power, it has memory, so you're good to go. After you establish the basics and turned on the camera, I guess the first thing to select is the mode you want to shoot in. And here you can see now in manual mode, and I can select program mode, shutter priority, aperture priority, and manual mode. That's actually all there is to it. If you want to understand what these modes are all about, I have a video about that, several actually. When you half press the shutter, as it's called, there's a little bit of resistance halfway down when you press the shutter. You will notice that the camera here focuses. You saw that it just moved. You will also see that it uses the light that sits here. If you switch that on, it will in relatively low light situations use that to focus. It can only use that for subjects that are up to, I believe, 3 meters away. But that's sometimes why you see this light going on. That's because it aids the autofocus. The autofocus sits here in the camera body on the Nikon D700. This is a wonderful thing with the 700. It has a built-in focus motor, and that means all the older autofocus lenses where you have a sort of mechanical focus, where you have this, I think they call it the screwdriver principle, but basically what that means is that there is a little thing here that the motor in the camera body catches, and that sort of drives the focus. So really a great thing that you can use all these vintage lenses with built-in autofocus and have the comfort of autofocus on your camera. But as you see, when I half press it, it focuses. And of course, when I fully press it, it takes the picture. If I half press it and release, then, nothing happens. On the back of your camera here, top right, you have an AF on button, and that does exactly the same as the half pressing the shutter. It obtains focus. The button just to the left of that does the same, but on top of that, it also locks the exposure. Your camera continuously exposes until you hit the shutter in full. So if you want to lock both the metering and the focus, then use this button here sitting right next to your viewfinder. On the rear side, you have the rear command dial and you have the front command dial, and those control various things subject to what it is you're dealing with. But in terms of shooting, the rear command dial controls shutter speed, if that's an option in the mode you have selected, and the front dial controls the aperture. Of these two buttons here, typically the top one is set up so that you get the aperture preview, meaning that if you push that one, you will, through the viewfinder, be able to see what the depth of field would be like when you hit the shutter. The function button here, that's configurable, and I can't even recall what the standard setting is. I can show you here when I have push that button. This is why I select my settings for shooting bracketed, because I shoot a lot bracketed. But this is highly configurable, and in the 3 videos I have about the menu system, you can see how you set this up. If you go to the right hand side of the camera here, we have already talked about this button here where you mount the lens. Bottom left here you have the focus mode. It's continuous, single, and manual. What that means is, in continuous, when you half press the shutter, it will continuously hunt for focus until you either push the shutter in full or you release the shutter. In single, it will just focus once, and then it will not focus again until either you've pushed the shutter or you have released it again. So single is good if, for instance, you want to recompose. For instance, you have a single point focus and you want to focus on something in the middle, and then you want to recompose because you want to have that subject maybe a little bit to the left in the frame, then single is the way to go. And manual, I hope, is self-explanatory. That's when you have to turn your lens manually in order to obtain focus. These two are contacts. I don't know, to be quite honest, what they are. Yeah, I think they're a little bit old-fashioned here in 2020. I never use them, so I will skip those quickly. The contacts here below this rubber thing. Top, you have the HDMI out, and you have a video out. I think these are actually sending the same signal just through 2 different types of contacts. Then you have a mini USB, I believe it is. And finally, you have the option for charging or putting power on the camera directly. I think this requires an accessory that I don't have. I am seldom in here, mainly when I'm doing videos like this. I use the HDMI out because that can send whatever is on the rear screen to the HDMI channel here. Looking at the buttons here on the left, top left, you have the play button, and what that will do is it will enable you to see the pictures you have in your camera. So you can see here I can walk left and right using this wheel here to the right, and that's basically how it works. If you feel like deleting a picture, you can press the garbage can here, and it will come and ask you for a confirmation. So this is deleting a single picture, and it will simply delete the picture. If you hit the garbage can again, it will drop the operation if you push play. So I will push play here. So single deletion here, and walking through your pictures here. Access to the menu system, that's here. You hit the menu button, and then you have these different menus here. You have the playback menu, the shooting menu, and so on. I've covered this in detail in another video or several other videos, so I won't cover it here, but know that menu button, that is where you get access to the menus. With the next button here, you can lock a picture so that it's not accidentally deleted. You can see here that it's a little key, I think, graphically. So it shows you that now that picture is locked, so you cannot accidentally delete it. So I think you see here, cannot delete protected pictures, right? So that's neat. If there's taking a picture, you think that's absolutely gold, I need to protect that, then you can do it like that. Unfortunately, I don't know if unfortunately, but you can actually just remove it very quickly again. When you're in the menu system and you are maybe a little bit in doubt, what is autofocus, maybe this AFS priority selection, what is that all about? You can hit this little button with the key again, and now it activates the question mark here. You can see you get an explanation as to what that menu item is all about. I find that very useful to refresh my memory. There's a lot of options here in the menu system. When you're viewing your pictures, you can actually zoom in, just hitting the plus sign down here, and you can again walk left and right. You can see here you have a little picture here of how what part of the picture you're seeing, and you can zoom out again. If you zoom out when you have full frame here, then you're diving into, I think it's called tiled mode, and that's also what this little flag here is signaling. And here you can scroll through your pictures, and you will also see you have a status bar out here to the right, where you can see how far you are in your collection of pictures. The OK button here, bottom left, is like hitting enter on your PC. It has the same effect, and it also has the same effect as pushing the center button here over on the dial here. Pushing the OK button, you also get access to the retouch menu, where you can work and edit your pictures. I never use this. I prefer to do that on my PC, but know that it's there. Over here to the right, you have the information screen, and that's a very, very busy screen, but it shares a lot of the information with the LCD here top right, so it's not that bad. But you can see here top left, I'm in aperture priority mode. I'm at 1/6 of the second, and I'm at f5.0. So this is aperture, shutter speed, and mode. The ISO is here. Just below the aperture, you have a little symbol here, and that brings us to the metering mode. You can see here there are 3 different metering modes that sits on the top of your camera. And this dial here, you can turn that so that the white dot is aligned with these 3 graphics. So if I just take, for instance, the 3D matrix, you will see that it shows me that here. So as soon as if I go to the single point metering, it shows that 3D matrix, and to the right I have the center weighted. So that's what that little graphic is all about. Right next to that you have a little note, and that's because I've asked it to give me a sound confirmation when I have obtained focus. Just below that you have the battery indicator. If you have the battery pack on here, you see there are 2 indicators. In this case I only have 1, and you can see I have almost a full battery. Just below that you have how many shots you have left on your memory card. And that is of course subject to the mode you're shooting in, and that you have over here to the left. Right now you can see I'm in RAW mode, and if you change that you will see this number changing. If the number of pictures available is bigger than 1,000, it will write a little K up here, and then we'll write whatever you need to multiply with 1,000 in order to get to the number of pictures left. That will sound very complicated. Basically if it says 1.2 down here and a K, then you have 1,200 pictures left, right? So that's a way of getting around the issue that this only has 3 digits. So if you have more than 999, That's the way it does it. In here in the middle, things I seldom look at, there's copyright information being written to the picture, and also you have the ability to give comments to the picture. I never use this part in general. All the things that are here in the center, I seldom use that. What I do use is this part here, and that is the focus mode. And you can see right now I have a single point focus, and that sort of equates to the selection I have made over here on this button here to the right. If I take, for instance, the middle one, then I'm in, 3D because it's tracking, because I'm in continuous mode. If I move out of continuous mode just to single shooting, you will see that the 3D in the bottom disappeared. So now it's just focusing, starting out with the focusing point I have selected, but working its way around that to obtain focus. Here it's using the full plate in auto mode, and it just picks whatever is the closest to the camera. So whatever is your preference, of course, but you can see here, whatever you select here, it changes and shows you here. Yeah. White balance, that is down here to the left. White balance is now in auto mode, and I have a full video about the white balance mode, but basically you select it up here, bottom to top left, and you can see here, up here I now push the white balance button, and you can see I can select a lot of white balance options here. So going back to A for automatic, you can see here that I have that shown here. If we go to the top left here again, you have the aperture, you have the ISO, and then we have a little S in a box, and that shows you what you have selected here on this dial here. You can see right now it is an S as in single, and if I go to say continuous low, the CL, that's what I've selected now here, you will see that now this little text has changed so that it says 5 frames per second, and then it shows you a lot of frames here, right? So this one changes as you change the selection up here, and here you can select between, as I said, single shooting, that means it only takes one picture. Continuous low is then you hold down the shutter, it will continue to fire, but not as fast as it can do. Continuous high, provided you have the battery grip mounted, you can fire up till, I believe it's 7 or 8 frames per second. I have a video about the battery grip. Then you have a little bit unusual live view. Normally on many other cameras that you probably, if you have had a more modern Nikon camera, you would see the live view button sitting here down bottom right where the info button is. But in this case, because I think there was one of the first instances that Nikon did of the live view, it sits up here. Then you have the timer release, meaning that when you hit the shutter, it takes a little while before it actually fires, and that's good. For instance, if you want to make sure that the camera is still on the tripod, if you're taking something where it's very important that the camera is still because you have a long exposure, for instance. It can also be because you want to run into the frame and take a picture of yourself. Whatever the situation is, this is a good alternative to a remote shutter release, in a cabled remote shutter release, that is. Mirror up, that flicks the mirror away so you can get access to the sensor. So whatever you select here, not everything is shown. Sometimes it just shows you, I believe, here, it shows you absolutely nothing. You can see there's nothing shown here. Sometimes it shows you what is relevant. Here in this case, it's continuous low. You can see that. So it changes based on what you have selected up here. S in a square box, that's single shooting, single frame shooting. Just below that, you have the compensation for vignetting. Here it's normal. The camera can compensate in various ways or strengths for vignetting. In here it's in normal mode, and I think that's what most would select. Again, this is something that I would work with in post, so this is not something I study very carefully, to be quite honest. Below that you have the selection of the quality, and you will also see that exact same picture bottom left in your LCD. And if I just change that, let me just give that a test. You can push the quality button, and here you can see you can change the various options here. And when you do that, you can also see that it changes exactly like that in the bottom left of the screen. And you will also notice on bottom right, as I mentioned, it will show you how many pictures you have got left on the card. And here you can see if I take normal, then it will tell me I have 1,300 pictures left. But I like RAW, so let me see if I can find that. There it is. 289 pictures. So that's the way it works. If you hit the information button not only once, but twice, then you will see all of a sudden the menu in the bottom becomes highlighted and the rest is sort of made dark. And here you can walk around with using the command wheel here. You can walk around and there are different options here you can choose from, and you can see here, for instance, I can assign the preview button, and bottom right I can assign the function button, and there are various nice things here you can select. For instance, the picture control, I can set the picture control to standard, neutral, vivid, or monochrome. So for instance, if you want to take black and white, you can select that here. Also here you can have the select between the shooting bank and the custom bank. You may recall, if we go to the menu system, that there is the shooting menu here, and then there is the custom setting menu. And these two menus, they have banks that you can select. They have 4 of them, both. So you can set up whatever configuration you want. For instance, you want to maybe have a configuration when you're shooting with flash. That's one option. When you're shooting outdoors, that's the second option. When you're shooting portraits, that's the third option, and so on. And you can actually name these banks, and then you can select them over here. Shooting menu, if you just take that one, you can come into that one. Or if you take the custom menu here, again, you can select one of these 4. I must admit that I don't use this, as you can probably guess, but if you have a lot of configuration and want to shift very quickly between different alternatives, then this is a fast way to access it. Bottom right, you have a little indicator for the CF card being active, both reading and writing, and of course it's wise not to take the card out while this one is flashing, but it just gives you an idea as to what the camera is doing. Another thing to notice is that you can select different display modes here. When you are in the playback function here, I can select up and down, and I can scroll through various ways of displaying the picture, and you can have a lot of information or you can have not so much information. How many options you have here is subject to the configuration and that you set up in the menu system. And once again, I would advocate that it's a good idea to see my videos about the menu system to dive into that, but just know that you may not have as many options here as I'm showing you here. But up and down, when you're displaying a picture, shows you various options for information about the picture. If you are in one of the modes where you have RGB, bottom left, these 2 modes, let me see if I can find the other one, here it is, RGB. That's because you can select the channel where you want to see your highlights blown out. If you're on one of these modes, then you cannot go into a tile mode. If you press the tile button over here to the left, nothing's happening. So if you switch to one of the other modes, all of a sudden it starts working. So be aware that the shifting in this tile mode is not possible in all of the display modes that you have here on the rear LCD. There also is an option to lock, and let me just see if I can. My button here is very, very tight, but you can lock it here, and that means that the selection point here will not move. You cannot move it now with the command wheel here. If you then take it back, whoop, like that, you can now see I can move it around. So that's if you don't want to accidentally sort of move the focus point, you can move this little white dot to the L, to be next to the L by pushing here as I did, and then it's locked. Another thing to notice is that this rear LCD has 2 modes. One is when it's light and another is when it's dark. So you can configure this as well, but here it's light on dark, and here it is dark on light. Here in my hand I have now unscrewed the glass that sits on the viewfinder here. I have an accessory here, it's called DK-19, and what that does is it helps you block out light that comes in from the side, especially like me, if you're using glasses, that actually helps you in seeing more clearly what's in the viewfinder. It can be combined with a DK-M, which is for magnification, and I hope I will do a review of that one soon. I have ordered it and I hope it's in the mail, but so far I haven't seen it yet. I can highly recommend this one at least, and first thing you need to do in order to unscrew this one is to block the viewfinder, you have a little button up here where you can block the viewfinder. You can see it's as if there is a little line here, and that's because the two aperture blades, as it almost is, they have now closed the viewfinder. This is very useful if you use or you do long exposure. It's also very, very useful if you just want to take off the glass here, because if you don't take off the glass, then it will actually make it very difficult or block you from taking this one off. So make sure to close your viewfinder when you're working with the glass here. Also, the viewfinder has, just to the right of it here, a little diopter thing. You can compensate here by turning. You need to pull it out as I just did, and you can compensate so that it fits your eyes the best. And of course, this is something you need to work with yourself to figure out what exactly is tack sharp for you. But once you found that and adjusted that, push that button back in, and then it won't move. Then you're sure that it's locked. Otherwise, the glass, it sits with a little thread here that you need to tighten like this. And that's actually all there is to it. Like that. If you have troubles getting it removed, first of all, make sure that you have, I'll just show you here, if I open the viewfinder like that, and I then try to loosen it, it will go some of the way, but not all of the way. All of a sudden it's stopped. If I then close it, then I can loosen it completely. This one can get terribly stuck, meaning that a lot of dirt and things can sit here in the thread and prevent you from actually loosening it. In that case, the worst thing you can do is to actually squeeze very, very hard to the sides here when you do that, because what happens is you take something that is round, and when you apply pressure, it turns oval. And trying to turn something that's oval within something that's round, that's not very productive. So try to see if you can hold as lightly as possible when you try and turn. You can also try and take something that's flat with good resistance in the surface and put that on the glass, and then very carefully turn it so that you apply some force but without squeezing the glass or the ring here oval. So but otherwise it's just like this. Just mount it and turn it. Whoop. And then you're good to go. If we look at the bottoms, top left here, I have covered this button here, the dial just below it, but you actually don't have a dedicated mode dial as you see on many cameras. Rather, I think this is adopted from the D3. You have a quality button. I just showed you how you change the quality of the images by pushing that one down and turning the rear command dial. You have the ISO button, and this one is quite interesting because contrary to my beloved Nikon D750, there's no easy way to access switching on and off auto ISO. So using this camera, I have actually had to learn how to change the ISO very fast. And you can see here, I just hold down the bottom and then I change the ISO. It's not a big issue. I think that you have to do it manually. You quickly get used to this in case you want to change your ISO manually. But I must admit that I like the comfort of auto ISO as well, and being able to switch that on and off quickly. But for that, you have to go into the menu system, unfortunately. White balance, I think I also showed you that, but in just again, the same principle. You hold down the white balance button and then you turn the rear command dial, and that changes the white balance, as you can see here in the screen here. Moving to the side of the camera here, you have a built-in flash, and the top button here releases. This is a so-called pop-up flash. I would question how much pop there is in my case here, because it seems a little bit tired, like it doesn't want to go to work. But releasing it, you push that button. Once you do that, you have the built-in flash. You also have a hot shoe here, so you can use an external flash. I use that, I must admit, all of the time. But if you want to use the built-in flash, you can push this button here with the little flash sign, and that gives you access to two things. One thing is if you want to have red eye reduction and how you want to sync with the curtains, I just use, the regular TTL mode as you see here. Maybe more useful, for, at least in my case, is that the front command dial gives you access to exposure compensation, so you can compensate for if the flash, for instance, is a little bit aggressive. You can turn it down a little bit, subject to your liking, of course. But all of this happens while you hold this button in and turn the front and the rear command dial. Also, I want to cover this little symbol here. I think it looks like something from the Tintin and the Pharaohs. And if you don't know what that is, that's a that's a cartoon. Maybe you have to be a little bit old to know what that cartoon is all about. But the reason why I mentioned that is because the Tintin and the Pharaohs, they have a little symbol. I will show that on the screen as I speak here. That reminds me of this symbol here. And this symbol is where the sensor sits in your camera, right? So when you have to measure the minimal focus distance, it's not from the front of your glass. It's actually from this little symbol here. So typically you can actually get closer to your subject than what you would think, but that's because you have to measure it from this point. So if you want to have a very, very precise idea about how close you can get to your subject, you need to measure from this little symbol here. Finally, I want to mention the content of the viewfinder, but I will say that many of the things you see in the viewfinder are shared with what you see in the rear LCD screen. And as I hope you have also learned through this video, much of what you see in the rear LCD screen is what you also see on the top right LCD. So it's not that complicated, but of course the screen in the viewfinder is a bit more compact. So let me see if I can find a drawing and talk you through what you will find in the viewfinder. So here I have a picture taken through the viewfinder. And as you can see, bottom left, there is a little green dot, and that's the focus confirmation. When you see that, then you know you have obtained focus. So why has it obtained focus? Well, if you look carefully, there's a little black square in the green area just below the cow, my happy assistant, the mad cow, and that tells you that is the point where it has obtained focus. And here I'm shooting in single point focus mode. That's my preferred mode, and I think many who are not sports or wildlife shooters, they prefer that mode. So the focus has been obtained in the green area just below the cow. Right next to the green dot, there is a symbol. I hope you have seen that before, because that is the 3D matrix metering. That's the metering mode the camera is in, and that you can select on your top right to the viewfinder, as I just showed you. Next to the metering mode, it says 8, and that's the shutter speed. So here it's rather slow, it's 1/8 of a second. And right next to the 8, you can say it says f5, and that's of course the aperture. Going right to that again, it says A, and that's because the mode I'm shooting in is aperture priority mode. And then to the right you have ISO 200 and the number in the square, that is the number of shots I have left. So hopefully you can see that lots of the information that you get in the bottom of the viewfinder is the same as you see in the LCD on the top of the camera, which is the same as you see in the LCD on the rear side of the camera. So, but very good information here in the viewfinder. I just want to mention that if you have not obtained focus, then you will see something like, if you're shooting in manual mode, for instance, the symbol you have bottom left here, that's an arrow that points to the left, a triangle that points to the left, meaning that I need to pull my focus point back, so closer to myself. Had it pointed the other way, then I needed to push it forward. And this is just a way of telling you, especially if you're shooting in manual mode, how you need to turn the lens or the focus ring on the lens in order to obtain focus. I have a full video about that. Sorry to keep saying that, but I do. And so if you want to learn about manual focus and how the system works, bottom left, that is a good place to look for it. So on the third picture here, you can see now has emerged a little exposure scale. And I have asked it to underexpose by 0.7 stops. And that's why you will see that there are now 3 bars to the left of the 0. It's a little bit crammed together. If you look to the left, that's just to the right of the F5, you can say it says minus, then there are a few dots, then it says 0, then there's the A, that's for the aperture mode, and then to the right there's the plus. Had I asked it to overexpose, the 3 vertical bars that you see, they would have been to the right of the 0. Now they're to the left to indicate that it goes towards minus. You can also see that a plus and minus sign that you also find on top of your camera has emerged now just to the left of the ISO. And this tells you that the camera is, in this case, underexposing. You will also see this bar emerging when you shoot in manual mode, and there the metering system is telling you how well you're doing in terms of metering correct. So that's the same scale that's used for that purpose. Finally, I just want to show you this scary picture from the manual. I don't want to cover everything that's here, but just to tell you that there is some more information, but I think I have covered the basics, and that's my ambition with this video, is to give you a driver's license and not cover every corner. But mind you that there is more information in the viewfinder than what I have covered just here. That was it from me. Thank you for watching. I hope that gave you some good basic knowledge of how to operate the Nikon D700. I will post a link at the end of this video to the playlist I have of this camera. And mind you that there are also videos in that playlist that are not made by me, but other good people have made a lot of good videos about this camera. So I hope you will enjoy that playlist. Also notice that I'm very happy to see if I can answer your questions, so drop a comment if you have a question. In my book there are no stupid questions. I am myself new to photography, and as I just told you, it took me 2 weeks to learn that this little button here actually released the memory card. So as I say, you know, I have shared how basic mistakes that I have made. So don't be afraid to ask what you may think is a stupid question. I don't think there are stupid questions, especially not if they're blocking you from getting the results that you want. Feel free to drop a question and I will see what I can do to answer. Okay, thank you for watching. As always, happy shooting, and especially this day and age, this is October 2020. Stay safe. Thank you for watching again. Take care. Bye bye.